What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. Hope you guys are doing well. And I know that it is the day before a game. Usually things are relatively chill in terms of non-game news the day before a game, but this is going to be a little different. First of all, I think the fact that this game doesn't mean as much as a normal game would has definitely allowed for things like this to be discussed when normally maybe this stuff would be suppressed and swept under the rug until such a time as there's more open air to discuss news like this. But right now, there is plenty of open air. And as a Seahawks fan, even though I care about this last game and I want to win it, it's definitely a factor that there's no playoffs on the line. So we've got a report this morning, or a little earlier this afternoon, actually, from a few different sources. We got Rappaport here. He had one of the tweets talking about this concerning Ernest Jones the Fourth. Ernest Jones the Fourth, the guy that we acquired in a trade from the Titans earlier this year, who came in and really transformed this defense. I guess we were engaged in talks about a contract extension, and as of earlier today, those discussions have been paused. Now, the discussion is eligible to be picked back up at any time. The pause is supposedly amicable. This is not a Jamar Chase situation, and there's every reason to believe that he wants to be back. But as of right now, it seems like the extension discussion has been cut off in favor of potentially allowing him to hit the free agency market in March. So, a couple different things to consider here for sure. Personally, I think that this is probably the best way to play this. And I think that if they play their cards right, this could end up being a win-win for the Seahawks no matter what happens. And the reason why I say that, the key to this, is the understanding that if Ernest Jones IV goes elsewhere this offseason, if he leaves the Seahawks and signs with any other team, the Seahawks can recoup maybe not just all, but more than all of the trade value they gave up to acquire him. So understand that letting him go doesn't just mean you let him go. You do get something back in this situation. You get a compensatory pick, and that compensatory pick has the ability to end up being worth quite a bit. So let's go through the math here. First, before we get into all that, because I do want to emphasize here that this could end up being a clear win-win for the Seahawks, let's talk about Ernest Jones IV as a player and why this might be happening. Ernest Jones IV is a very, very good player. He's maybe even a great player, but he's not the best of the best, right? He's not as good as a Roquan Smith. He's not as good as a, healthy Fred Warner. He's not as good as the best of the best at the position. He's not prime Bobby Wagner. He's not Ray Lewis. He's not Brian Urlacher. He's not any of those guys. He is a very good, bordering on great player, but eliteness, I think, eludes him, and I don't know if there's much he can do about that. Physically, he is a little bit of a limited player. He is on the slower side as is, and he's young, right? As he gets older, he's only going to get slower and slower, and I think that holds him back from being a truly elite player, and there's not much you can do about that. We also know that he's got this lingering knee injury. He's got a knee injury that is only going to exacerbate some of these issues. So I think that the Seahawks are fairly looking at Ernest Jones and saying there's a little bit of a ceiling here, and that ceiling might come down a little bit if this knee injury ends up being something that lingers into the rest of his career, which is totally possible. A knee injury like that, which he has been dealing with all season, we know that because he's on the injury report pretty much every week, is only going to exacerbate your issues with something like speed. So you look at those things and you go, okay, we know we can't pay him like he's the best, right? The best of the best at this position are making $18 to $20 million a year. We can't do that. From Ernest Jones's perspective, maybe he's like, well, I saved this defense. When you guys traded for me, you guys were one of the worst defenses in the league. You had some of the worst linebackers in the league. I came in here and I made this defense elite. This defense has been pretty much elite ever since we acquired him. We've had a couple of bad games. There have been some bad moments, but the defense transformed completely. They went from a defense that was getting carved up by Daniel Jones to a defense that was just straight up winning some games for us down the stretch. So, from his perspective, maybe he does deserve to get paid like those top of the line guys, but if you're this team, I don't think you can justify that. You've already got enough stuff you need to worry about. You need to think about extending Charles Cross. You need to start thinking about extending Boye Mafe. You need to start thinking about soon we're going to have to extend Devin Witherspoon. What's going to go on with Derek Hall in a year? Are we going to extend Geno Smith? Are we going to extend DK Metcalf? There's only so much money you can invest in a linebacker who I would say is right around the 10th best inside linebacker in the league, but he's not much higher than that, and he really won't be getting higher than that. That's kind of his ceiling. And while it's a small sample size, I think we have a pretty good understanding that this current Seattle Seahawks brain trust, with Mike Macdonald at the helm in particular, should be able to find viable linebacking options without having the most choice of picks, like Tyrese Knight. I don't think anybody on the planet thought Tyrese Knight, when he was drafted, was going to be a viable starting linebacker as a rookie, but he has been. Maybe that tells you that Mike Macdonald is something of a linebacker whisperer, and you don't need to spend huge money on a linebacker when you can just lean on him to say, hey, go get somebody cheaper, go get somebody who's a rookie on that rookie scale deal, and turn him into the next Ernest Jones. That might be something that they're looking at. So if he's looking for Roquan Smith money, I don't think you can give it. Now, obviously, negotiations are negotiations, and you're going to have a situation where he wants that, Seahawks want something else, and you meet in the middle. But here's where things get kind of interesting. So the Seahawks traded a 4th-round pick to get Ernest Jones in 2025, this upcoming draft, the 2025 draft. They gave up a 4th-round pick. If they allow him to leave in free agency and he signs a reasonable, decent deal with another team, you are going to get that 4th-round pick back in 2026. Almost certainly. It's pretty much a guarantee. There's no way Ernest Jones is going to sign for less than that, I don't think. Unless the knee injury is really bad. In which case, you wouldn't really want to sign him anyway. But if he goes to another team, you are almost certainly recouping that 4th-round pick, and there's a very good chance you're getting a 3rd-round pick back, which is the maximum. If he signs a deal in line with like $13-14 million a year, very good chance you recoup a 3rd-round pick in 2026, which basically means you're coming out even on the trade, and you also got the benefit of his really good play in 2024 for the second half of the year, which, hey, that's worth something. He didn't make the playoffs, but it wasn't because of Ernest Jones, I don't think. I don't think you can blame any of that on Ernest Jones. So what you could do, and what I imagine this team is thinking about doing, is they make Ernest Jones an offer at a certain point where if another team tops that offer, you get a 3rd-round pick back in compensatory picks for 2026. And if no team can beat that offer, he comes back, re-signs with the Seahawks, and then you get to keep him. So basically, it's the win-win. Either he comes back at a reasonable cost, and I do think $12-13 million a year for Ernest Jones is reasonable, if a little bit of a gamble, or he leaves for a price you would consider unreasonable, and you get the pick. So I think this makes sense. I think that this makes sense for both sides. And obviously, Ernest Jones, he doesn't really care about the compensatory pick situation. Only thing that he really should care about would be, am I going to get paid my money or not? Am I going to be in a situation that I like or not? So it works out for him as well. But I'm open to just about anything happening with this situation. I would love to keep him because he's been really, really good for us. But I also understand that he's not Roquan. He's not the best of the best. He's top 10, but barely, if I had to try to put a number on it. And maybe he's just outside the top 10. He's in that range. I don't want to put an exact number on him, but either way, I'm happy with it. If we get a 2026 bonus 3rd-round pick, a pick that would be right around, if not just inside the top 100, I think that would be really good value for a guy that we only had to give up the 4th-round pick to get. So let me know what you guys think. I want to be clear here. There's no indication there's bad blood here. This is, again, not a Jamar Chase situation. We could hear tomorrow that extension talks have picked back up. Maybe right after this game, we're like, okay, let's open up those conversations. But if I had to guess, we're trying to make sure that what we get in the Ernest Jones extension is as much or more than what we would get from just letting him walk. Because what happens if you let Ernest Jones walk? Well, you're freeing up cap space that would have gone to him. Now maybe you can invest more money in the offensive line. Maybe now you can invest more money into a Geno or DK extension. Maybe you can invest more money in your other extensions that you got to do to some of these players who are just wrapping up their third year. And look, Ernest Jones has been great, but I think for most of us, we would consider that to be worth the trade-off. If it's Ernest Jones or Drew Dahlman, if it's Ernest Jones or Tevin Jenkins, I think most of us would take Dahlman or Jenkins. But we'll see what happens. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Everyone, have a good rest of your day. I'll be on Twitch later. And yeah.